Today we'll be solving linear systems by substitution. This is from your homework, the worksheet titled 6-2, Solving Linear Systems by Substitution. I'm going to do 3 problems today, starting with number 1. Number 1, we're given 2 equations here. X equals y and x plus 2y equals 3. So I want to solve this system by substitution. I'm giving 2 linear equations and I need to substitute. Well, the first thing that I need to do is solve one of the equations for a variable, either x or y. But if you take a look at number 1, it's actually solved for both. X equals y and y equals x. They're solved, they're alone on either side of the equation. So I can substitute either of those. What I'm going to do is I'm going to substitute in y for x. So I'm going to take y here, and I'm going to plug it in for the x because I'm saying x is y. Therefore, I can plug in y wherever x is. So let's go ahead and do that. That would be y plus 2y is equal to 3. So now I can double check that I did my substitution correct because I should only have one variable left in my opposite equation. And I do, I only have y. So I'm going to solve for y now. Y plus 2y is 3y. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 3. Y is now equal to 1. Now that I've solved for one variable, I can go and plug that variable back into one of the 2 equations. I'll choose the first equation, x equals y. And if I know that y is 1, then I know that x equals 1. Okay, and then that should make sense. You can always test this by plugging it into the other equation as well. 1 plus 2 times 1 equals 3. 1 plus 2 is 3, and that's correct. Finally, we have to write this, as an ordered pair. X comma y, 1 comma 1. So there's our answer. So here's our answer for number 1. Okay, next problem I'm going to do is number 3. I have 2y equals x plus 1, and my second linear equation is 2x minus y equals 7. Now, I can choose which equation I'm going to solve for a variable. I could do the top equation and solve for x. I can use, or y. I can use the bottom equation and solve for x or y. It doesn't really matter. I want to do what's easiest. If I really analyze these equations, I think the easiest thing for me to do would be solve for x in the top equation. And the reason for that is all I have to do is subtract 1 from each side. Here, to solve for y, I would have to divide by 2, and then I'd be left with some fractions. And I just don't like to deal with fractions if I don't have to. And then down here, to solve for x or y, I'd have to add 2x and then divide by -1. So it's just an extra step. So let's go ahead and do that first equation. Here I have 2y equals x plus 1. And I'm just going to subtract 1 from each side. 2y minus 1 equals x. And now I have to substitute this, what x is, into the opposite equation where x is. So if my opposite equation is negative 2x minus y equals 7, I need to take all of this and plug it in where x is. Because this negative 2 is multiplying, I have to put this 2y minus 1 into parentheses. Now it's minus y equals 7. Now that I've done my substitution, I'm going to double check to make sure that I only have one variable left over, and I do, it's just y. So I'm going to go ahead and solve for y. I'm going to distribute the 2 in. I'll get negative 4y plus 2 minus y equals 7. And then combine my like terms, I'll have negative 5y plus 2 equals 7. Subtract 2 from each side. Negative 5y equals 5. Divide both sides by negative 5. And I get y equals negative 1. So now that I know what my y is, I can go ahead and plug it in. I know that y equals -1. I'm going to plug it into the top equation. 2y equals x plus 1. And I have 2 times -1 equals x plus 1. 2 times -1 is -2. And then I subtract 1 from each side. So I have -3 equals x. Okay. Then I would write down my ordered pair, x, comma, y. So my answer, my solution for this system is -3, -1. Again, you could plug it into the opposite equation just to double check. You say, okay, if I want to plug this in, I get -2 times -3 minus -1, and that has to equal 7. -2 times -3 is 6. Negative negative becomes a positive, so I get +1 equals 7, and that's correct. So I just double checked with the opposite equation that I plugged it in for. So now I know that -3, -1 is my solution. Okay, last problem we'll do is number 11. Number 11 says, if the difference in the side lengths of two squares is 10, and the sum of the side lengths is 18, what are the side lengths? So we need to figure out what is this problem actually saying and identify our variables. So we have two different squares, it says. Here's square number 1, and then maybe I have a little bit of a bigger square, square number 2. And I need to know what their side lengths are. Well, let's make one side length x and one side length y. And because it's a square, all of them should be the same in each square. So if without drawing a picture, I could say, well, x is the side length 1. Okay, and then y is the side length of square 2. It's important to define your variables to make it easier for you when you're writing your equations. So then we go back to our problem again. It says, if the difference in side lengths of two squares is 10 and the sum of the side lengths is 18, what are the side lengths? So I can kind of figure that right here, about here, I've got two different equations. The first one would be the difference in the side lengths of the two squares is 10. Difference I know means subtraction. So it means if I take, well, in this case, if I look at my squares that I've drawn, y minus x, that difference should be 10. Okay? And then it says the sum, well, sum means addition. You can have y plus x equals 18. Now, you could have x minus y. It just happens to be that I drew my squares this way, and that's what makes sense, y minus x. But you should still get the same two numbers doing it opposite. Okay, so now let's go ahead and solve this using substitution. Well, I want to substitute in, I'm going to solve this second equation that I wrote, I'm going to solve it for y. So let's go ahead, I'm going to subtract x from both sides here, and I should get y equals 18 minus x. So now that I've got this all solved up, I can take this 18 minus x and plug it back into the y of the first equation. So I'll have 18 minus x equals 10. And if I solve here, I'll get 18 minus 2x equals 10. Subtract 18 from both sides. I'll get negative 2x equals negative 8. Divide both sides by negative 2. And then finally I get x equals 4. So now that I know that my x is a positive 4, I can substitute this back into one of my original equations. So maybe I'll substitute into the first one, y minus x equals 10. So if I substitute 4 in for x, I'll get y equals So if I substitute 4 in for x, I'll get y minus 4 equals y minus 4 equals 10. And then I add 4 to both sides, and I find that y equals 14. So my solution is 4, 14. And that should make sense. The difference of the two is 10. 14 minus 4 is 10, and the sum of the two is 18. 4 plus 14 is 18. As always, if you have any questions, please see me or Mr. Daniels at any time to go over any of the problems.